Good. I'm glad you're here. So today we're going to be talking on the second installment of our looking at Hebrew Matthew. Now, anytime you do a study, and I'm looking at one aspect of it, you know that there's several different ways of looking at anything, especially in the Hebrew understanding. Right now, I'm really going to hit it with the understanding that Matthew wanted to show us that Yeshua was to be king, that his story was about the Exodus, and that Yeshua was going to be a better Moses. And so we see that in a lot of the wordage and the way he's talking about things, and the way he's putting things together, so that we can understand what he's trying to do is to reach to those in the Jewish community so that they can understand. We always look to Yeshua and go, well, Moses was a type of Yeshua. But to them, they're thinking Yeshua is a type of Moses, because who do they know? And so we got to understand that their viewpoint and the way they're looking at things is a little bit different than us, because they came from a little bit of different time place and spot, if you will. So we started out yesterday kind of talking about that there's no religious or secular understanding. When we created church and state, we've kind of created a mindset that there's a place for church and there's a place for state, right? But really, is there any place? It's God, and He's over everything. And if we would put things together in a proper way. Now, I'm with you. I would rather have. I don't want our current state to be in charge of church. Not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a mindset that when something happens to you in life, was it a quinky dinky? Did it just happen? Or was it involved in God somehow, in some way? And I think that if we all really was conscious about it, we have fallen into that thing of saying, well, I don't know if this maybe just happened or whatever. But if we developed a mindset that God's in charge of everything, little and small, it's going to change your world of understanding. And this is the way your ancient Near Eastern people would kind of view things. Matthew's going to set up the Genesis, or the generations of Abraham to David, David to the Babylonian exile, the exile to Yeshua. Proof, text. Why would you start out a chapter giving a genealogy, unless you had a purpose for that genealogy? And that purpose really was to show the rightful king. Who is the rightful king? Yeshua. Now, for me, before getting into this, I always saw Yeshua coming back as a king. I never equated that they were trying to set him up as the king then and there. But for the Jewish people, they have to see him as king now, before they could ever see him as king later, or having the right to be in that king spot. And so Matthew is going to try to prove to these people, look, he's the rightful king. Everybody's sitting there, but the rightful king is Yeshua. And so he is going to develop that understanding. Why? Because we departmentalize our spiritual and our, he couldn't be a physical king, he had to be. But like I said, to the Hebrew, ancient Near Eastern people, what do they say? King, king. They have no problem with him being this complete package. Why do we have to have things, anyway, we'll get into that. The Jewish audience in this world is excited to see that there could possibly be a national person, somebody of their own flesh and blood, somebody with the right standing to be in control. Why? They have been under Gentile rule or foreign powers for how long? They moved and gone to Babylon. Right? Okay, moving is kind of a generous term, right? They were exiled out to Babylon. When they came back, yay, we're home. Are they home? Yes, no, right? Because when they come home, now this foreign power is in rule over them. Yeshua is presented as one who came to restore the dynasty of King David. They knew the promise that the line of David would be an eternal king. They knew that. Now, did they understand what that meant? I don't think they did. To them, they're going to see a king as being a king. Do they see that as going to be more of even a spiritual thing in that sense? Probably not. So the Jewish people have come with this mindset, they're still a slave. They've never left this slave mentality. Y'all understand this, because when you come in and you've gone from the Babylonian whip to the Roman whip, even though it's in your hometown, it's still a whip. They're still slaves, even if they're in their own area. Now, is things better for them? I believe it is. They're allowed to, and if you look at the history and you start looking at the miraculous things of how the Romans allowed them to have their own cultural, religious aspects, it's pretty amazing, because a lot of things fell into place to where they could worship God the way they wanted to through the temple. And this is amazing. Now, is it that big of a deal when the Romans have many, many gods? This is just one more god. To them, it's like, yeah, we're not going to destroy a god, because what if he's a real god? I mean, it just makes sense in that sense. So anyways, not to get into make that complicated, but they want a Moses type to come and resurrect them, to bring them out, to exodus, if you will, and to take them out from the power of Pharaoh, whatever Pharaoh that is. They still see that freedom can be had through God, through Yahweh. They know that he has the power to do it. They know he has the strength to do it. But are they under this slave mentality? What do slaves do? They act like slaves. As long as you keep a people pressed down, they will stay pressed down. Do the Romans want them to have anything but a slave-type mentality? Oh, no. Keep my thumb on that little problem real quick. Keep you pushed down. Guys, remember the circular thinking, circular reasoning, right? If Moses could do it and could bring them out of Egypt, can he do it in the Holy Land? 10 times more, right? So they know that. They know that because they understand the circular understanding that this Moses power still exists. It can happen, and it can happen for us too. Now, are they beat down to where they kind of like, it'll happen to someone else? No. You know, they're in a spot. They're going to have be built back up into where they can start having confidence. They're going to start, they're praying, they've got their king. They're still not where they want to be. I want to change gears for just a moment. We're going to look at the temple and the temple placement, where the temple sits. Okay? When we look at the temple, and all of this, guys, I know I'm coming with a lot of little things, but all of this comes together. I promise you, if you'll hang on to your seats, and you'll get there, or I'll get there maybe. We look at the temple placement. We understand the language being used in Matthew. We start to understand and think in the ancient Near Eastern culture. We see scriptures where God tells them, when you go into another place, take down the high places. The other gods, take down their high places. And so you're thinking, okay, well, that makes sense. Why? Now, start asking questions. Why are they high places? Why are they built in high areas? Why are they up there? Why does it seem like every culture has a high place? You have to understand this because it's going to start working itself even into the book of Matthew and into how they look at things today. So Yeshua, he goes up to the mountain to pray. He's going to a high place to pray. Okay? We see this over and over again. Elohim meets with Moses on a mountain, on a high place, so that he can speak with him. Now why didn't he just do it in the desert? Why didn't he do it in the wilderness? But he picked a high place to talk to him. High places are not necessarily a bad thing. They are if they belong to a different God. But we have to understand the mindset that's being done here. The temple will be taken from the Jewish people. And we're at this point, when we're talking Matthew, as far as with Yeshua being there, he's not really, but he knows, I think Matthew knows that the temple is about to be destroyed, or it has been destroyed by the time he's writing. One of the two. But at either rate, the people are going to lose their high place. The only place that God said, this is the place to worship me, this is the place to sacrifice, this is the place to come, this is it. This is the high place I want you to go to. All others, nothing. They're dead to me. What's with the high place? Okay. We'll simplify this quite a bit. And I'm not moving on with my, here we are. The high place, when we look at an ancient Near Eastern idea, heaven is where who he is. We still believe this today. Where does God live? He's in heaven, right? I mean, don't we all say that? I mean, like, even when you're a kid, you know, someone says, who did this for you? Man upstairs. The high place, the one in heaven. We still say it today. And in fact, Scripture even confirms it. We'll say it, that God is in heaven. The temple would be built as high as possible between, usually on a mountain or a high place, as high as you can get it. Why? Because you're trying to get to heaven, trying to get to God, trying to get to where he is. Most of the time in the ancient Near East, they would build a throne there, and that's where the king would sit. And he would have all the little gods around him, or what they would consider gods, made of stone or wood or whatever. He would sit as the mouthpiece, the mediator, the one who would speak for the gods. Sounds interesting, right? So the king is sitting there as close to God as possible. The earth is where we little mortals run around, right? This is where we do our thing. We're earth dwellers. So the king is going to, before that, so if you make a pilgrimage up the mountain, it's like going where? It's like going to heaven. Now, all of this language, have you heard it before? Have you used it? You want to go to heaven? Well, which way you got to go? If you're going to the bad place, where do you go? It's below the earth, right? I mean, in our mindset, this is what we still talk in the same terms as we're talking about then. So these kings, they're going to be sitting on the throne, using as a mouthpiece. They refer to themselves as God. They are the earth god. And so Pharaoh, if you want to put it that way, he's an earth god. He still believes there's other gods. He's just one of them. He's the one that's in the domain of the earth. So the heaven gods are going to be kind of giving him whatever down low. And of course, there's the hell gods, if you will, you want to call it that. I don't even remember what the name of it don't matter. The god that in Hades or wherever that they're referring to it. But the important part to remember now is that when you hear the phrase, the king has a son, what's the son referred to as? Y'all know already. The son of
God.
God. Interesting. So, when Yeshua starts referring to himself as the Son of God, do you think that he is, everybody's going, I've never heard that term before. They did. They've known this term for a long, long time. In fact, it's referring to the king, actual king's son. Does that mean that he will someday be king? So Yeshua, is he using terminology that people would understand that he is saying, I am the future or now king? So it's understood, right? This is an understanding. So when he's speaking, when Matthew is speaking about this, they understand what he's saying. It's not like this is a new term that came out of nowhere. Because even the pagan gods or the pagan kings would refer to these things. So it was just, it's terminology. It's understood terminology. Is it wrong that he does this? Obviously not. Because he is trying to show a relationship and his positioning in this world and the world to come. When I'm speaking to you, I want to speak in ways that you would understand me. If I start speaking some kind of, which by the way I couldn't do because I'm not that smart, but if I got into something and saying some stuff with a terminology you didn't understand, would I be defeating the purpose of speaking? And so God, and his wisdom, is using their own culture. So remember the big picture. The book of Matthew will be to fulfill the destiny or the dynasty of King David. Yeshua is a better Moses through the backdrop of the Exodus story. Now we're going to start getting into what the Exodus story and how that plays into Matthew, because I don't know about y'all, but when I look at Matthew, I'm going, I don't really see this Exodus story. It's there. And as you start seeing little clues, it starts popping out more and more. Matthew 1:18 says, now the birth of the Messiah Yeshua took place in this way, when his mother Mary, had been betrothed to Joseph. Before they came together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. We start right out of the gate. He tells the genealogy of Yeshua. Line of David. Why in the world would he start the next sentence in, well, and he was born of a virgin? We go to Isaiah 7, 10 through 14. Isaiah 7, 10 through 14. It says, again, Yahweh spoke to Ahaz. Ask a sign of Yahweh your Elohim. Let it be deep as Sheol, or high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask. I will not put Yahweh to the test. And he said, hear then, O house of David. It is too little for you to weary men, that you worry my God also. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Is he still connecting King David with the genealogy? He got the top all the way to through the end. Matthew is pointing to prophecy. He's fulfilling the prophecy of the genealogy of King David. Now in Matthew 2:1 it says, now after Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who was born King of the Jews? For he saw his star, and we rose to come to worship him. We read this kind of dismiss, we just kind of dismiss it. We read through this stuff and we read so fast that we kind of see there's a lot of information in those few sentences there. Tons of information given to us. First of all, the Magi are Eastern priests, sages. They are not poor magicians. These are not these poor little, guys that are just coming out of nowhere. Let me do a trick for you, pick a card. No, these are not these guys, right? They're going to be traveling. They're more than likely dignitaries, probably representatives of kings, and they are going to be traveling in a huge caravan. We're talking about multiple camels, lots of people coming with them. We're not talking about 3 men on donkeys or camels with, this is going to be a huge operation. Herod sees his convoy. He's going to feel the sting of these men coming in and going, hey, we're here to worship the king, not you. What do you think he thought? Not me. I'm a king here. Oh, no, there's one that's born. Where is he supposed to be? You should know. And so he asked, and of course he's going to find out that this king is born in Bethlehem. They obviously know what was told as well. But so King Herod in history will prove to be a tyrant, even killing his own family and ensure his own legacy. And we know that he kills the kids, the boys as well. He's not a good man by any stretch of the imagination. We see the temple language in the fact that they are moving east to west. And if you look at some maps, you get kind of confused because how are these guys moving the way they're moving? And they're saying, so the idea of east to west is temple language. You start in the east. Where's the Holy of Holies? In the west. It's in the in the temple itself. It is in the east, but I'm talking when you're moving through, it's going to be, so moving in a direction from east to west is temple language. They are looking for a holy place. They're looking for a holy existence. to be. They're later going to present gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This is also temple. All of this is used in the temple itself. So we again see a language of the temple. Do you think Matthew wanted you to make these connections? Absolutely. So we got the prophecy of Bethlehem, Micah 5:2, but you, O Bethlehem, Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah. From you shall come forth for me one who is to be a ruler in Israel, who comes forth is from of old and ancient days. So the priest, the Torah scholars, they look this up. They're going to quote this quote to Herod, who's going to also, they probably are standing there while he's doing it. The Magi hear it, and they know where to go. That it's going to be Bethlehem where this star is. We have a star. My goodness, what in the world is going on with this star? Right? I mean, crazy star business. If you give me $100,000, I'll name that star for you, and you can have that with your name on that star. I'll do that for you. Okay, that's not the reason why this star is mentioned. But understand that God is in heaven. And when we first started talking about temples and places, you go to a high place, you go into heaven. The men in the ancient, they look up, and what do they see in the night sky? Stars. And they equate those stars with deities. They equate those stars with kingship, royalty, and majesty. Now, guys, I know you're thinking, well, there's a lot of paganish stuff going on here. Well, who the pagans get it? I mean, I'm just saying, there's a lot. You have to go with understanding of what's going on. Why are these men following this star? Why do they know to follow this star? They know that kings and princesses are attached to it, and we know that we have prophecy as well that's made about that star. And so they're following the star because they know a king had been born underneath that star that's coming out of wherever. Numbers 24:17 says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and scepter shall rise out of Israel. That's Numbers 24:17. Genesis 37:9. Remember when Joseph is talking about the dream that he's had. Another dream is told, and his brother said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. Guys, does Joseph become almost better than the king? And these stars that are bowing down to him, these are great in understanding of greatness, bowing before him. It goes even deeper than the first when he's just saying, you will bow before him. Yes, but so will all of the nations will bow before him. So they understood this idea of the stars being equated with greatness. King Herod knows that the wise men were not going to return. He kills all the boys, 2 years and younger, around the same age that Yeshua would have been. This is the same pattern that we see. Who else killed a bunch of boys? Pharaoh. Pharaoh did. The pattern we see is that Pharaoh is killing the Hebrew boys. We see now that Herod does the exact same thing. The Exodus story. Now, Yeshua and his parents are going to do what? They're going to flee to Egypt. Now, what you always say is, whoa, but they're fleeing to Egypt, not out of it. They're still, the writer wants you to hear, these children were killed, they were fleeing, and Egypt was part of the story. Because it connected all into Exodus type of language. Right? So we see this. The writer wants you to connect those stories. The kingship relationship. A king to restore peace over chaos. And that's exactly what Moses did, and that's exactly what Yeshua has done. Matthew 3, 1 through 12 says, John the Immerser is in the position as an ambassador and herald to the king. Guys, I knew this the whole time. We knew that he came. But if you really understand it, when a king comes, you would send out a party. A heralder and a crier who would say, hail ye, the king is coming. That's my best, English, whatever. But what they do? They would clear out the rocks, they would clear the path, and they would even straighten the path if they could. So that the king would have this very nice ride. You know what I'm saying? Nice and cush for the king. What is it that John the Baptist is yelling? Prepare the way, make paths straight. Is this kingdom language? Absolutely. He is talking about a king is coming. He not only stops to say that, the message is, you produce good fruit or he will remove you. Little axe at the root. That's a king's job. The king is the one who takes out the riffraff. The king is the one who comes in. Who else has that right? So he's sitting here. We literally see him speaking of this kingship language. Yeshua is going to, at this point, we're continuing the story, and amazingly, we have a coronation that's about to happen. Yeshua is now a little older. He's about 30 years of age. The story is moving very quickly, right? And we're now out of the childhood era into him being an adult. John will be a witness to this mikvah. Yeshua is immersed. He comes out of the water. He's on dry land. And read that. It's interesting. Heaven opens, the Ruach descending like a dove upon him. That does remind us, even if you want to go back to creation, the story, or the story of Noah and the dove coming back to the ark. The ark is a thing of salvation. Guys, there's so many connections. I won't try not to bring all these connections into it, but so we can go in a different direction. But let's just stay with the Exodus for the moment. Father cries out, "This is my son whom I love, and whom I am well pleased." What does the king say to his son as he's coordinating him? "This is my son. He is the one who will be the king. I am pleased with who he is." So you have this, even this understanding that the king, the father, is giving this right to be a king to the son. Yeshua is immersed in the Jordan River, comes out dry land. Israel leaves Egypt, walks between the water, immerses, and comes out on dry land. Chaos. Water is about chaos. Land is about standing firm. It's about where you build the kingdom. Kingdom you don't build in the water of chaos. So we walk from chaos into covenant made with God and man. When becoming a king after coronation, it is common for the new king to have to go through some kind of mock trial to show his power. Okay? Usually you take your top knight, the bad boy, and you tell him, don't kill the guy, rough him up a little bit, but he's going to knock you off your tail end. And this is going to be our little... And so you see these little mock trials. And so they'll come out, the king, he's waving his sword, and everybody yells and screams and gets happy. Now, how many movies have you seen where the knight is supposed to do that, and he, proves he's better than the king and knocks him over? What happens when a knight does that, by the way? He's not going to live very long. He's not... You dishonor the king, you're dead. Okay. Yeshua is not an exception. He is going to go through his trial, if you will, in a real wilderness experience. This is not going to be, his adversary is going to come up against him, waving his sword, if you will, and we know that Yeshua is going to win. Everybody still with me? Yeah. We're good? Exciting? This is exciting stuff. Hopefully I'm not plowing too big of a field, but I love it, and I want us to get to some places in Matthew, so I want to make sure that we see some of these things so we can equate. Matthew, Yeshua must determine what type, or Yeshua is going to try to determine what type of king he is going to be. Now, Yeshua already knows, but you got to go through the testing. Do you know who you are until you've been in the desert? How many of you have been in the desert? I know a couple of you that I know have been through a desert season. Do you know yourself a little bit better now than you did before? Do you start knowing that you maybe can endure it a little bit more than you thought you could endure? Whether you want to or not. And so we've got this picture of Yeshua going out to the wilderness. He is led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Now, one of the things I want to ask you to do is when you see something that you go, well, duh, he was hungry. That might be the clue that God's trying to say, there's more to this than actually what you think it is. Because, duh, he was hungry, right? But is God trying to say more? I think he is. I think we're seeing the sign of. So Israel comes out of Egypt. Yahweh speaks through Moses. They wander in the wilderness. For 40 years they wandered, and they were hungry. You think God was trying to find them a place where they weren't just hungry for the flesh and for the things of their belly, but a hunger for him? Did they ever really find that? Yes, no, some. I mean, that's the whole thing, is we can't, say for all. But they struggled, as we did. Hassan's time will come to Yeshua, and the first thing he's going to do is attack the old flesh, right? The flesh always gets in our way. I don't know about y'all, but I can diet for a few minutes, and it seems to come back. Verse 3. If you are again Elohim, Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. But he replied, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahweh. We know that comes from Deuteronomy 8:3. Isaiah needs to get to the place, or Israel needs to get to the place where they're hungry for more than Yahweh's sustenance, but for his word. They need to get to the point where they're more worried about the word of God than they are about their own stomachs. These temptations are calculated. They're to satisfy the flesh, to gain power, wisdom, world recognition, and dominance. Guys, we're all kind of tempted by some of those things. Absolutely. Genesis 3:6 says it was good. When we talk about the fruit, we have Adam and Eve. They were standing there together. Sorry, guys. Not just the woman. And the woman says it's good to eat. It was pleasing to the eye and enticing to make one wise. Is this the same enticing things, the temptations that she was going through? Absolutely. Matthew 4, he tells this stone to turn to bread. Good to eat. Set on the pinnacle of the temple. That was pleasing to the eye. Or, well, that one would be more enticing to make one wise. It's showing the kingdom of the world. Pleasing to the eye. 1 John 2:16 says, trust or lust of the flesh, desire of the eye, and the pride of life. These are the things that we go through when we're being tempted. Yeshua knows what kind of king God would have him to be. Yeshua knows that. That's not the problem. Do you know what kind of person God wants you to be? Yeah, that's not the problem, is it? Never is. But can he pass the test to be worthy? And we know that he will. There and then some. There are all sorts of models of different kind of kings throughout all of the scripture. But when we hit the time when Yeshua's own in this area, is there good models of kings in the first century? No, there's not. They're all about power and substance, getting themselves filled with off the backs of others and corrupting the system. He wanted to show peace, justice through love and honor. So this is a very strange paradox. To the gods of the ancient world, the people understood that to find favor with the gods, now we're talking about the upper, well, probably even the earthly gods too, but the upper gods, they would have to work in the field, they would have to slaughter or do or collect. They're going to feed the gods. Gods want to be, they're not going to work for it. They want man to feed them, right? And so if they don't sacrifice, then they might not have a good crop next year. So it's just an understanding, right? So here comes Yeshua who says, no. Let me give to you. What kind of king is that? That's so paradoxical. I mean, what? What? You're going to give to us? Wow, a great king. A great king. I'm giving to you. So, what sin is there in turning a rock or a stone to bread? It harms no one. Logic states he's hungry, he has the power. Why not? Is that human reasoning? Hey, 40 days, you're hungry, there's a rock, you can make it into bread. Hey, why not? Well, who's he going to harm? Who's he going to hurt? This is a test to not let the flesh tell the man what to do. Let me say it again. This test was to make sure that the flesh wasn't telling the man what to do. To be dictated by what this world tells you is the norm, but by what the Father instructs you to do, and to do that and do that only. How hard is that? It should be simple. It's one of the hardest things in the world for us humans to do. I'll be quite honest. To not let the flesh get involved. This test will be a king that gives to his kingdom, denies himself, and follows the word of Yahweh, and follow it up. Okay, verse 5, then the devil took him to a holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, if you are Ben Elohim, Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. Yeshua said to him, again it is written, you shall not put Yahweh your Elohim to the test. 6:16 in Deuteronomy. You know that the southwestern corner of the temple is the highest place on the temple. And that on that spot, you could be where everybody pretty much in the city could see that point. So it's a visual thing where you can see it, even if you're in your area. Now, obviously, well, y'all know how that works. You probably got the apartment that sits, catty corner and can't see anything. But everybody pretty much in the city can see that point of the temple. And here he sits, or here he stands. He's been taken to this pinnacle point. Probably familiar place. His family might have even taken him there when he was a kid at 12 years old or so. And said, hey, this is an awesome view. Look out over the city of that sort. I want you to remember something. The people have been mocking him. The religious people are telling him you're not speaking the truth. You're a king. You're the Messiah. Show them your power. Show them what you can do. Let them see if you're really all that. How tempting is that? You've been pushed, you've been told, you've been all this stuff. And now you've got a place where you can actually show who you are. Let the people know you've arrived, that you've come, and now you're here for them. Now, guys, I know this is early in his he's about to start, he's just starting his ministry, but we're looking at, he knows what's coming, he knows what's happening, he knows what time it is. Make them bow down to you. Instead, when Yeshua's disciples are baptizing, more than John in Judea, Yeshua leaves Judea not to draw attention to himself. Yeshua heals and says, tell no one. Yeshua just kind of points up, if you will. Yeshua would make a terrible politician because he doesn't draw anything to himself when he does something well. He wanted people to be drawn to the kingdom, not coerced into the kingdom. Verse 8. Again, the devil tells him, takes him to a very high mountain, shows him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. He says to him, all these things I give you, if you fall down and worship me. Then Yeshua says, go away, Satan. For it is written, you shall worship Yahweh your Elohim, and him only shall you serve. But eyes mean to covet, collect, and gather. These are probably a very good way of describing most kings during that day. They want to collect stuff for themselves. They're very good at collecting. The Zealots had an image of kings and kingdoms in which they could take from the Romans in turn for what the Romans had been taking from them. But Yeshua is a king who gathers rather than takes. Where will you find the kingdom of God? In the place of giving rather than taking. In the heart that man has hardened, that God has softened, and making sure it's accepting of his kingdom. This is a radical concept, to build a kingdom from the king who is a servant. A servant, Messiah. I'm sure if archaeologists could request something, they probably would love for Yeshua to have been more material and have had a big old palace, and they could dig up this marble floor. Maybe the bedroom would have this sign over it that says Yeshua slept here, kind of written in the marble a little bit. That would be great. But when we start worshiping the stuff, do some who think they have some of his stuff worship it? How much more would we worship something that belonged to him? The only thing that we know that Yeshua gathered to himself, other than men, is 5 articles of clothing that 4 soldiers gambled to try to take home with them that Yeshua had in this world. Yeshua had to consider whether the Father would want him to have palaces and servants. This is what kings do. Is it tempting? Sure. Yeshua, knowing the heart of the Father, rejects the notions. Kings had servants. Yeshua was a servant. Kings build monumental architectures to themselves. Yeshua built his dynasty off of people's love and their devotion to him. The third temptation, as we were looking at this, does with the pride of life, to be recognized and be held in high esteem. Yeshua is the most recognized name in the world. Why is he the most recognized name in the world? He didn't collect things. He changed lives. And that is the legacy that Yeshua brings. All right, so hopefully, as we're going through this, you're starting to see how the Exodus plays a part. They're wanting a better Moses so that this Yeshua can take them out of captivity, take them out of where they're at. He's trying to also is going to start bringing in into understanding the salvation issues of the heart. It's not just about physical things and wealth, but it is also about being part of the larger kingdom that is eternal, not just the kingdom that is of this world. But Matthew is doing a great job at this point of painting the picture to the Hebrew Jewish people that King David's legacy is fulfilled by Yeshua, that he is going to be a better Moses, that he's going to not just get them out of Egypt and into a promised land, but in that positioning of going through, he's going to make them have a better life lived in the doing. We are still going to have to go through a wilderness, though, by the way. We're still going to be tested, but he's still going to give us that love and the joy and peace that passes all understanding. All right, good deal. Next week we will continue on into Matthew 3. Or Matthew part 3. Excuse me.